My name is Sue Bulger, and together with my husband, Leo, have been a part of this community for the past 12 years. I'm humbled to be asked to open the word with you today, and I feel so ill-equipped to say anything profound. I was asked to share today because it's Healing Sunday, and I have worked in the healing profession for the last 40 years. I've devoted my life to healing. I became a nurse because I was looking for a language and skill set that would allow me to devote my life to caring for those who needed care. My work let me experience all aspects of caring, from kids to seniors, from Native American tribes to third world villages, from public health to corporate health care. The most satisfying to me in every different environment was being able to have something to offer to bring others comfort and safety. Being able to practice nursing is a privilege that I will always cherish. In the first reading from Isaiah, it made me think of healing in a whole new light. When I think of experiences of healing, several events pop into my memory. These were times when I was involved in the death of my patient that shook me to my core. And when I think about them now, I see that they still offer learning to me. Last week, one of the prayers Jim Ayers offered as a prayer leader said, "It causes stretch marks on the soul." These experiences did that to me. The first one was when I was a nursing student working with a team of healthcare students and professionals providing care in remote villages of the Dominican Republic. I spent 3 summers doing that work. This happened in the first summer. I lived in a town that actually had a hospital, which was a building with a few beds open to the chickens and the dogs to run through freely. But it was a center for the surrounding compos when people were very ill and they brought them there. A family dropped off a 3-year-old boy because they realized he was very sick. It stretches my soul even more living through it again now, because I have been blessed with 3-year-old twin granddaughters who are privileged and loved and living robust lives. This little boy was dying of starvation. His eyes were sunken and dark. His tiny body was skin and bones. I could not accept that in this day and age, and this was the late 70s, that we could allow a child to starve to death. I stayed up all night with an eyedropper, dripping electrolyte fluids into the boy because we had no other technology to offer. I prayed all night for that boy's healing while I loved him and tried to drip him back to life. He died in the morning, and that experience has never left me. And when I reflect on our Isaiah reading, I ask, where was the healing? And today I realize that great healing occurred that night. I believe the boy had to experience just a little better quality death by my loving presence and singing to him. There's Missy, beautiful. But greater healing occurred with me as I deepened my commitment to the directives given by Isaiah. He said, "Loosen the bonds of injustice. Let the oppressed go free. Share your bread with the hungry. Bring the homeless poor into your house. Do not hide from your own kin." This had been my life's commitment before I even understood the depths of its meaning. I was given further conviction about fighting oppression and injustice that allows a beautiful 3-year-old child to starve to death. No one deserves to be hungry or homeless. Healing any apathy that existed in me due to my very privileged life was taking hold by that healing experience. Next, I think back about my time working as a nurse at the Indian Health Hospital in Pine Ridge, South Dakota. Being one of the few RNs in the facility, I was floated to all areas of care in the hospital. And this evening, I was working in the emergency room. We got a call that a person with a gunshot wound was on their way in. I braced myself and I prepared the room to provide care. But I had not prepared myself for the experience I would have. The victim was a 16-year-old boy, and we were unable to revive him. As we ended the code and I prepared to move his body, I was struck so deeply by the scene of a boy on a gurney covered with a sheet, but at the end of the bed, his red sneakers were sticking out. I will never forget those red sneakers. He was just a boy. Such a senseless, but not uncommon experience it was. My education deepened about the injustice endured by our Indigenous people. It has been for generations. So the young generation had little experience of their true culture, and they were left with oppression that they grew up in. Their life was surrounded by chemical dependency and violence, and only occasional reminders of the beauty of their culture. We had done this to them. My healing experience was to know deeply in my soul what happens when people live immersed in oppression and injustice. And it was inflicted by me and my privileged class. How could this be? I needed to pray and learn about this. I struggled with Isaiah's instruction that if we focus on healing those things that cause oppression and injustice and hunger and homelessness, the promises were, then your healing will spring up quickly. Then you shall call and the Holy One will answer. You shall cry for help and God will say, here I am. It is only now, after praying with this for a couple weeks, that I can read this without being hopeless that this can ever be true. Where is the healing that will spring up quickly? There's so much healing needed today. You can't avoid it every single day when you turn on the news. 2.2 million individuals have been lost in the last year to COVID-19 virus. Over 450,000 of them in our country alone. You've seen the photos of the nurses and other healers trying to make a dent in the suffering. They're bruised and exhausted and defeated. They will suffer from the trauma probably the rest of their lives. Trauma from giving it everything they have every single day and being surrounded by death in spite of it. I keep asking, God, where are you? How can you let this happen? I know you can prevent this suffering. Look at what you did when you were with your friends on your travels. In Mark's gospel, Simon told you his mother-in-law was ill. You took her by the hand and raised her up. The fever left her immediately, and she began to serve you. You did that over and over again that night. But then the crowds became overwhelming. One person could not heal all those people that needed healing. All of our healthcare professionals cannot heal all the people suffering and dying from COVID. But you were more than a person. You could have figured it out. In the second reading, Rabbi Shapiro puts a lot of the responsibility for healing on us. He says, we must open ourselves to healing. We must actively participate in healing. We must turn to our healers. And then when there is still so much healing to be done, we turn to life, the vast power of being that animates the universe as the ocean animates the wave, seeking to let go that which blocks our healing. Again, it hints at a promise of healing if we turn to you, God, and let go of that which blocks our healing. Right now, I'm deeply struggling with this because I have 4 people close to me suffering with cancer. 2 of them might not be around at Christmas. They desperately want to be healed. They've turned to their healers. They're actively participating, but will they be healed? I desperately want their cancer to be taken from them, healed like the people in the Gospels. I pray to you, God, please take the brain tumor and pancreas and liver tumors and breast tumors away. Let them have their life back as they knew it before. Isaiah said, you shall cry for help and God will say, here I am. So where are you, God? I have one last story. It involves an experience of a miracle, just like I'm praying for my friends. My brother Dan was the next in line for me. I'm one of 9, and where you are, I'm number 6. He was number 5. He was closest in age to me, and he was diagnosed with kidney cancer 12 years ago. At that time, my very Catholic sister asked if we would all pray to Father Solanus Casey, who was a Capuchin Franciscan friar in Detroit. He has a fascinating story. He was a local boy, so it interested me. He was from Wisconsin and he worked in Minnesota in his early years, and eventually he became a priest. Because he was not well educated, he mostly served as a receptionist, but he held weekly services for the sick, and it was later found that he was instrumental in curing people. In 2017, he was beatified by Pope Francis. He needed another miracle for sainthood, and my sister thought that my brother would be a good candidate for him. So all of us started praying for a miracle cure for my brother. Early in my brother's cancer journey, the cancer metastasized to his brain. He was scheduled to have the brain tumor removed, and our big family all gathered around for his surgery. On Friday, he met with the surgery team and they mapped the tumor in preparation for the surgery on Monday morning. He went in on Monday for surgery, and when they set him up with the scans for surgery, the tumor was gone. The doctors had no explanation. There was no sign of a tumor. Surgery was canceled. We all went home. My sister was thrilled that she might actually get to push Solanus over the sainthood finish line. My brother was given a prognosis of 0% chance of living for 5 years when he was diagnosed 12 years ago, and he immediately set his sights on dying. He ended up dying 10 years after the diagnosis, angry for the last 5 years that he wasn't dead yet. He may have had a brain tumor miraculously healed, but he did not heal any other part of his life. He did not go on to serve like Simon's mother-in-law did in Isaiah's story. Instead, he stopped living, and he spent a miserable 10 years waiting for death to come. Healing for my brother was not curing his cancer. Healing would have been having the will to live each day and be thankful for his life in that moment. Healing would have been coming to loving relationships with his wife and kids and experiencing forgiveness and love. Healing would have been dying, feeling peace and love. I use Jesus as an example for what we do to figure this out. He went away to the wilderness and prayed. He looked for guidance, for direction and sustenance. And in that time, he understood that he had to leave the crowds who needed healing behind and move on to the next town. He had to keep focusing on his core job, spreading the good news, healing as he could, but touching as many as possible with his teaching so others could join in the work. There is still much for me to learn in the area of healing. Maybe I should not feel frustrated that Jesus walked away from crowds that were asking to be healed. Maybe healing occurred without Jesus taking their affliction away. Maybe we do have a very active part in our healing, in believing that healing is possible and letting go of that which blocks our healing. Amen.